everyone, and welcome back to Growing with TJ. As you can see, we are outside here in the garden. It's about 40 degrees, pretty windy, so pretty cold wind chill, but today we are going to be pruning this raspberry bush. This is a Meeker Raspberry. I'm not an expert on pruning fruit trees or anything fruit related. I only have a peach tree, 3 blueberry bushes, and then this raspberry. So even though I'm not an expert, I've been growing this raspberry for 6 years, so I've learned a lot along the way. And how I prune, end result is a lot of raspberries and a lot of growth. As you can see, it is pretty wild right now, and it needs a lot of pruning. So there are 2 types of raspberries. We have everbearing, and an everbearing raspberry bush will produce a small harvest in around June, and then they'll do a larger harvest around September. So that is everbearing. What I have here is a summerberry, which simply means it is going to produce all its fruit usually by the end of July. So in July, I'll get all the fruit, and then everything will start. You'll still have the new growth, all the green, but the other woods would no longer produce me any raspberries. Alright, so how I prune my raspberry bush. I know some people, after it already produces fruit, they like to cut that cane down right away, straight to the ground. I don't do that. I will do all my cutting around this time, late winter, early spring's kind of coming up, and that's when I will do my cutting. So raspberries only produce fruit on the 2nd year cane. So this past summer, I had new growth come up. It grew tall, it got green, got bushy, and it did not produce me any fruit. Now this coming year, that canes that came up from last year, they will produce my raspberry fruit. So there's buds on here, you can see this one's going to produce raspberries. Now any that produced last year, those canes are now dead. They will not produce me any more fruit, so I want to cut them all out, down to the ground, and get them out of here. That's going to give me a lot more space in here, and after you do that, then we can start picking which 2nd year canes we want to keep, kind of spread them out how I like them, about 6 inches. Maybe top some off to make it more bushy, and then you'll see how it really looks. It's going to look a lot cleaner and a lot nicer than it is right now. Now, one thing I do want to mention is when I created this space here for the garden, I was really new to gardening. I did not know much about it at all, and I kind of went to the nursery and I saw a raspberry bush and I picked it up. I plopped it right here, and this is the 6th year of this raspberry bush. Now ideally, this is not the position that I would want my raspberry bush. It's kind of right here, it's taking up some valuable space, and it'd be nice to be able to plant other stuff right here. Now I don't have it in me to get rid of it or try to get rid of it, even though it really spreads, so it's gonna be hard to get rid of. So what I'm gonna do is really prune it up, keep it within these stakes, so that I can try and control it a little bit, and I'll show you how that looks. But I'm gonna keep the center open, so 1, I can pick the raspberries easier. I can get in there and pick them, and 2, I can keep some good airflow and sunlight. So that's the 2 tips I want to do today: is keep the center open for picking, and also for some good airflow. Ideally, I would put this somewhere else if I were going to do it today, but obviously back then, 6 years ago, I didn't know much about gardening, so I put it right here, and that's just what it is. We got to deal with that. Okay, so 2 things you're going to want to have when you're doing this, because they are prickly, is a nice pair of gloves and some pruners. I mean, I'm not sure how well you can see this, but you can see this one right here, right? I'm going to chop it off and show you why it's dead. I'll cut it right here, and then I do have a little tie on there. So if you look here inside there, Kind of tough to see, but you can see there's no green and it is completely dead. There's no new growth in there. It's dead. So if it looks like that, you know that that cane is dead, and you want to get rid of all that. Now if I take one of these, cut that off. I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can see the green right there. That tells me that this cane is still growing, and that is what I want to keep. Alright guys, so you can see that I did my pruning. I really cut it back just because of where it's at. I can't let it go crazy. I got to keep it under control. A lot of dead wood I cut off, and also some second year canes just because they were getting out of control. I'm sorry about the wind, but right here is, like I said, is the center I have open. That way I can go in there and pick berries when the time comes. And also it's kind of like a V, so let some sunlight down and some good airflow. I will end up tying them up just to straighten them up, keep them how I like them. Just like that. I just don't have any ties right now, so I'm gonna have to leave it as it is. But you see, I cut off a lot. I might even get rid of a little bit more in here when I tie them off to kind of keep them separated a little bit more. Okay, I came up here to try and get out of the wind a little bit, but you can see this would have been the cane on the second year growth that gave me raspberries. And now you can see it is dead. Now I did cut some off that were second year canes that will be fruiting this year, just because I want to keep it under control. And that's how you can see all the green. This right here would have produced me raspberries. You can see the bud right there, a couple buds on there. So yes, I am losing fruit by pruning it, but I need to be able to get in there and pick berries. I need to keep it under control because of where I put it at the time. It's not in a great location, so even with me pruning heavy like that, I'll show you some pictures and videos of all the raspberries I get. It is a ton. I can't even eat them all. I gotta freeze a lot of them, and the growth is incredible. So I believe if you somewhat follow these tips, again, I'll tell you to, do your research, experiment, and see how it goes for you. But with all the pruning I'm doing, I have great raspberry harvests every year. Alright guys, so there you have it. That is how I prune my raspberry bush. Again, I will tie these up to kind of keep them straight and looking nice. But like I said, I am not an expert, so take what I say and do as you wish. And make sure you do your research and always try new experiments. Alright guys, so I just wanted to pop on here quick to better explain what I mean when I say first year and second year cane. That is what I refer them to, but you will see the more scientific name, so I don't want you to get confused when you see that. So the first year cane is called a primo cane, and that is, they come up in the spring, they will be green, they will grow rapidly, they can grow 4 to 8 feet very quickly, but they will not produce any fruit for you. Now, the second year cane is called a floricane, and they will turn to like a brownish color, woody, and that is what is going to produce fruit for you that second year. And that usually is for summer bearing is going to be July, early July, end of July is when you'll get all your fruit. And after they produce the fruit, that cane will die. It will no longer produce fruit for you, And that's what I'm referring to, is what you want to cut down in the ground and get it out of there, because it no longer is going to serve a purpose for you. Now, it can be a little confusing how to know which is first year, which is a second year cane. When I first started pruning raspberries, I was not very good at it. I, I tried, I experimented, I learned. I remember the first year or second year that I had the raspberry bush, I cut everything down in the ground, and it obviously was a mistake. I did get some berries that year, but it was very minimal, so I don't suggest doing that for a summer bearing. One way that helps me remember what is first and second year cane is when that first year cane comes up, and then I prune in the winter, I will tie up all those second year canes. So when I go to prune the following winter, remember those second year canes already produce fruit. I can simply look at the tie and see, okay, I know that is the second year, or that cane is dead because it produced fruit in its second year, and I can cut them to the ground. Now, if I tie up any of the new growth, the first year canes, I will use a different color tie, just so I know, okay, when I prune, I'm not cutting down, that cane that's going to produce me fruit the following year. So that's just a little tip I use. You can tell if it's a dead cane by looking at it. You're not going to see any little buds on it. It's just going to be a woody stick basically. And after a while of pruning and practicing, and after years, you will start to pick up what is a dead cane compared to second year cane that you're going to keep when you prune in the wintertime. So it's just little tips like that. The best way is to prune, make mistakes. It's all right. We all make mistakes, and you keep trying, and eventually you're going to get the hang of it, and it's not going to be as hard as it is at first. I know for me, it was a challenge at first. I had to watch a lot of videos, read a lot of stuff to figure out which is the right way to prune, and what to cut down and what to leave up. Now, I do obviously cut down a lot of second year canes in that winter before they're going to produce fruit. And that's simply because my location of the raspberry is not ideal. I planted that early on when I was very new to gardening. I kind of just went out there and got a raspberry, put it in the ground. So it's not in a great spot. So I got to try and keep it compact, keep it in one area so it doesn't spread all over and take over valuable space that I have to put other fruits and vegetables. So if I had more space, I'd be able to leave more of those canes, and my harvest would be a lot more. But because of the space that I have, I do prune it down very heavily. But with that being said, I do get a ton of berries to harvest. I make pies, jams, I freeze some, and of course I fresh eat. My daughter, we all love to eat raspberries and pick them. So even though I am pruning heavily, I still get a very good raspberry harvest, plenty for me and my family. So, it's just something I have to do. It's not an ideal space that I have for that raspberry, and I just have to deal with it. So I heavily prune. So I really suggest that you go out there and you get some type of fruit-related tree, bush, and you get it in the ground. The best time to plant a fruit-related tree, bush, is now and not tomorrow. You want to get it in the ground. The more years you have it in the ground, the more it's going to produce for you. And it's just going to give you a head start on getting fruit harvest. Just make sure that you really think about the location. Obviously, I made that mistake early on, and I put it in a poor location, and because of that, I have to prune heavily. So just think about where you're going to put it. Envision the garden, and just try and find a good location for it, and you won't have to prune as heavily as I do, and you will reap the benefits. I promise you that. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below, and I'll be happy to answer them. And have a wonderful day.